Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at when Ironheart happens in the MCU timeline, as well as a pretty serious error that they had in the timeline. We'll see if you caught it as well. So I really apologize for this taking me so long. I was on vacation for a couple weeks at Disney with my son, but I appreciate your patience. So there will be spoilers, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. So we've entered a new month, and thus we have a new contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have to announce our June winner, which is Mr. Caleb Rocks 32. All you have to do is go to the About section of my channel and reach out via email or Discord, and I'll get your prize right away. Plus, we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check that out, and hang around to the end of the video, and I'll talk about our Doomsday Countdown watch on the Discord. All right, so I did a poll asking people where they thought the show would appear in the Disney Plus timeline. And you can see the majority of the people said right after Wakanda Forever, and then right after Echo was a distant second. And I see why people said that, because Disney Plus put out a special look, which basically had them saying in our series, we're telling the story of what happens the days after Wakanda. And in a way, that's true. It does pick up after Wakanda Forever. It just picks up a lot later than all of us thought. So, where did I think it would land? I was guessing either after Echo or She-Hulk, and I'll talk more about that. But more importantly is, where did it land? Yeah, it was after Thor: Love and Thunder. That wasn't even one of the options in my poll. My goodness. So it's clearly before Werewolf by Night, which is October 31st, and Thor: Love and Thunder is in October of 2025. So that means it fits sometime in October of 2025. And in fact, in an article on The Direct, the producers of the show said it's about 6 months after Wakanda Forever, which October is, 5 months, so about 6 months. Okay, but what does the show itself tell us about the timeline? Well, we know that we last saw Riri in Wakanda Forever. That's May of 2025. And of course, Shuri said, your suit, it's a great design, but I can't let you leave with it. So she comes home with no suit. Now, I do have to mention the trailer scene that didn't end up making it in the show. So we got our main man here from MIT saying, you're not the first genius at MIT. And of course, we remember him from way back in Civil War when Tony Stark basically gave scholarships to everyone in the room. And he's like, hey, what about the teachers? Do you have some money for the teachers? But yeah, this scene did not show up in the actual show, but it had a major timeline indicator. Notice, 7/25 of 2025. But actually, I think this probably still happened, even if we didn't see it happen. Because when the show first starts, she's heading back to MIT, presumably right after Wakanda Forever ends. And notice the trees are very green. Here we see more green trees again. And then we know that she spent probably a lot of time putting together this brand new suit. So I'm betting that she's been working at MIT over summer and then into the fall semester. So thus, this 7/25/2025 simply means she was working on the suit during that time. And it is worth noting her white suit looks a little bit like the one that we saw in What If, maybe paying homage to that. So that was kind of cool. All right, so we then learn that she is expelled from MIT, effective immediately, and she heads back to Chicago. And notice, by the time she reaches Chicago, it is definitely fall. Look at those trees in the background, the leaves on the ground, and consistently we see fall weather. Here's some more fall weather during the first heist. Here's some more fall weather. The trees with no leaves whatsoever here. Here's some leaves in the gutter, and the tree, of course, has no leaves. And then here's another shot. So I must say, I'm really impressed with the fact that they made the environment of Chicago look like fall weather. I don't think there was a single scene where we didn't see trees without their leaves on it. Very, very impressive. All right, so we're definitely in the fall. Now, we do learn a key date of Rampage's death. Notice it is 9/2 of 2025, so September 22nd of 2025, and the report is filed on September 24th of 2025. We're also told in episode 3 that there's a time passage of a few weeks, because we learned, so you were dumpster diving a few weeks ago, and now you're buying expensive headphones. So in other words, Riri came back to Chicago, and now it's been a few weeks, and of course, she's in the money, right? Because she's doing the heist with Parker. We also learned that the main part of the show is in October with this quote where they say, the hottest day in October, man. Do you really need the heat on? So yeah, okay, we're in October. We don't know when in October, but we're definitely in October. So that fits with what we saw on Disney Plus, right? Sometime in October, before October 31st, and it fits with the quote of about 6 months. So everything is working perfectly, right? And then there's lots of things that fit well with this time frame. For example, these posters tell us there's a Harvest Festival coming up on October 31st, and this one tells us that the Slam IM Teen Poetry Competition is on Saturday, November 1st. And by the way, in 2025, November 1st is indeed a Saturday. Love it. Also, Ezekiel's license plate here, it's a little hard to expand and see, but it's definitely 2025, but I think that's maybe '06. So it's expired, but it's definitely 2025. And here's what I think is really cool. So in Illinois, they change the color of the sticker every 5 or so years, and notice it is indeed orange, which is the correct color for 2025. And considering this was filmed in 2022, yes, that means they had to go and get the correct sticker. That is so cool. Nice attention to detail. All right, even the flowers work in the fall. I was kind of like, how does she have these nice flowers in the fall? Well, they turn out to be black-eyed Susans, and guess what? Black-eyed Susans typically bloom from early to late summer, specifically June through October. Wow, so even the flowers work. And then we have this elevator date, which honestly isn't too helpful. It seems like it says maybe June 22nd, but it still works, because if it was inspected in June and we're in October, totally good. That means the elevator is safe. Well, actually, the elevator turned out to be quite dangerous, so maybe this doesn't help. But anyway, bottom line is timeline management was fantastic, except for one big problem. All right, so the problem arises in episode 3. Remember, that's where we learned that she's been dumpster diving a few weeks ago, and now she's buying expensive headphones. So we have that gap in time of a couple weeks. However, the very next scene, she's confronted with the death of Rampage. Remember, Miss Williams, I'd like to ask you about your relationship with Stuart Clark, and here's the key thing. He was found dead this morning. So remember what we learned, that would be September 22nd. So this scene is happening on September 22nd. Well, guess what the very next scene is in episode 3? That would be when they said it's the hottest day in October. Oof, right? I mean, it can't be the hottest day in October as well as being September 22nd at the same time. So I'm guessing this error occurred because they didn't tell us Rampage's death until episode 5, and they just didn't piece together the continuity issue in time to fix it. So you got to go with lines over a blurry date. So I'm going to say, therefore, that Rampage actually died in October. Bummer. I wish they hadn't had this mistake. Otherwise, it's been a perfect timeline. And actually, speaking of a really good timeline, Riri's timeline is amazing. All right, so we get this flashback to when she was 8. She's working in the shop with her stepdad, who confirms she's 8 years old. Notice they're dancing together, and while we don't know the exact month, we can guess it's fall because look at the tree outside the door there. All right, so then we learn that she finished 9th grade at age 11, as you can see from the line they said, but also we see that she was a junior at age 12. Riri Williams, age 12, is shown with her winning project, RoboDog. Despite her young age, she's already a junior at the South Shore International College Preparatory School. We also learn she started college at age 15, and we learned that she graduated from high school in 2020. So that's really cool. That means she wasn't blipped, that's confirmed, and we know when she graduated from high school. And then we see that she lost her stepdad and Natalie 5 years ago. They say, yeah, I can sense it's still weighing on Riri after 5 years. I mean, not being able to say goodbye to Natalie or her stepdad. And she later confirms it's been 5 years since he died. So it's 2025. Probably this means 2020, maybe even before she took off to school at MIT. All right, then we also see she started building her suit soon after losing them because she says, that night I just froze. I couldn't help them until the paramedics came 1 minute too late. So that was her motivation for building the suit. She wants to help make sure that no one else dies because paramedics or other emergency crew can't get there on time. Very cool. So we get another confirmation that she started college at age 15 because she's told, I brought you here because the field would have devoured the 15-year-old you, but you've been here for over 4 years and still no true matriculation towards a degree. So in other words, she's now been there at least 4 years. She's going on to her 5th year at MIT. We also learned she was 19 in Wakanda Forever because when she's asked by Shuri, how old are you? She says 19. All right, so let's summarize the things we know about Riri's timeline, and I think we can nail down when her birthday is within about a week. So we know she was age 11 when she finished 9th grade, and at her preparatory school, you finish the grades in June. We know that she was 12 in 11th grade, but we know nothing more than that. We know that she graduated from high school, 12th grade, in June of 2020. We also know that in September 2020, at age 15, she starts college. We know in May of 2025, she was 19 in Wakanda Forever. And finally, we know that she's in her 5th year at MIT in October of 2025. We just don't know what her age is. So what can we do with all of this? Well, first of all, we know she's age 14 when she graduates from 12th grade because she was 11 when she graduated from 9th grade. Thus, we can also go back and put in 2017 for when she graduated from 9th grade. Then we can put in when she graduated from 10th and 11th grade. So, with all of this filled in, we can figure out within a week or two when her birthday is. We know that she did age from 14 to 15 between June and September of 2020. We know that she didn't age as she jumped from 10th grade to 11th grade. Now, the earliest she could have gone to 11th grade is August of 2018, because that's when her preparatory school started its school year. So we know her birthday is sometime after her preparatory school year starts, but before the MIT school year starts. Therefore, her birthday is most definitely late August timeframe. That is so cool. I love her timeline. And because of that, we can now also age her to age 20 during the show, because it's October 2025 and she would have had her 20th birthday. Very, very cool. Nice job on this timeline. So really, other than Rampage's date of death, this timeline has been amazing. So now let's look at some of the other characters' timelines. So Ezekiel Stane, we learn his dad, Obadiah, died in a plane crash. Of course, that's a lie, right? He died fighting Iron Man, but in the Iron Man movie, Coulson said, that's being handled, he's on vacation. Small aircraft have such a poor safety record. So it's so funny that all these years later, the general public still believes that Obadiah Stane died in a plane crash. In fact, we hear them saying on the news, Obadiah was fondly remembered as the former COO of Stark Industries who tragically died in a plane crash more than 15 years ago. And indeed, it was more than 15 years ago because we're in 2025. And of course, the timeline book officially told us the first Iron Man movie happens in 2008. So I love it. That's all perfect. Also, we get an Ironmonger name drop when Zeke says, I had an Ironmonger, basically, as my dad. That's the only time that Obadiah Stane has officially been referred to as Ironmonger. Now, in the Iron Man movie, he said, that's what we do. We're ironmongers. We make weapons. So they dropped the Ironmonger name, but he didn't necessarily refer to himself that way. So I love that Zeke has now canonized that, yes, he was Ironmonger. And then Zeke might have been 19 during Iron Man. He says he's 36 during the show. Iron Man was 17 years ago. So if he wasn't blipped, he would have been a teenager during Iron Man. And I kind of like that idea better than him being in his 20s. So let me know your thoughts on that. But I'm going to guess he was 19 during Iron Man. And speaking of Iron Man, we get this nice reference to the annual Tony Stark International Sciences Expo, which is May 5th through May 8th. Of course, we saw the Science Expo in Iron Man 2, and we do get a date for when it was happening. They tell us 5/6 of 2010. And in fact, in the timeline book, they tell us the battle with Whiplash is on May 5th of 2010. So that works perfectly with the expo continuing to be in early May. All right, so now let's talk about the timeline for Parker, which of course will lead to the appearance of Mephisto. Oh yeah. All right, so we know he was thrown out by his dad at age 12. No wonder he hates his dad, right? We know at some point in a flashback that he went back to rob his dad, but of course things went awry and he and John have to split up, and that's when he runs into Mephisto. Oh my word, so awesome to finally get Mephisto. Now, I will admit, I was a little worried that Borat was going to play Mephisto, but let's just say I didn't once think about Borat because his performance as Mephisto was chef's kiss. Unbelievable. And of course, that leads to the Hood being born. You're soon going to look like the king you were born to be. Now, I'm going to guess these flashbacks were maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, because he immediately began forming his team and plotting his revenge against his dad. Now, of course, we did see a brief glimpse of the Hood in What If, so that was kind of cool, but it was great to get to see him in all of his hooded glory in this series. Then also, speaking of Mephisto, if you go back and watch episode 4's credits, at about this point in the credits, you'll hear this really evil laugh. It kind of comes out of nowhere. That's got to be Mephisto, so that was really cool. Anyway, Mephisto then informs him that he has many clients, you're not my only client, and that maybe I'm just going to replace you with someone who's more appreciative. And of course, that replacement will end up being Riri. Oh my word. Did not see this plot twist coming. This was so cool. So I gotta point out that while he is tempting Riri, we get this really creepy image of his reflection in the spoon and see what he really looks like. So please, Marvel, bring him back. Don't let this be the only time we see Mephisto. All right, so he explains to Riri that out of the Forbes 100 richest list, he's made a deal with 100 of them, plus 14 kings, 3 popes, and also a beetle. Of course, Ringo, right? Poor Ringo. Man, oh man, poor Ringo. So that means other characters in the MCU might also have made a deal with Mephisto. So my top 2 picks are Sharon Carter, because she pretty much rose to power as the power broker out of nowhere, and Kingpin. Wouldn't it be interesting if that explains how he became so super strong in the Hawkeye series, and also how he survived getting shot in the head by Echo? That would be very cool. One important thing to note, though, is that when you make a deal with Mephisto, it seems that those scars start showing up on your body, so keep that in mind. Anyway, Riri now makes a deal with the devil. Even though we don't see her shaking his hand, we do see that Natalie is back again. Not the AI Natalie, but the real Natalie. And in fact, we do see those scars starting to form on her arm. So I can't wait to see what happens with this. Because remember, back in the Agatha series, we have Jen talking to Wiccan saying, did you know that Agatha traded her own child for the Book of the Damned? They say no one knows what happened to him. They say he might be dead. Others say he might be a demon or an agent of Mephisto. So Wiccan knows who Mephisto is and knows he's a bad dude. So when the champions form, and I would be shocked if they don't have both Ironheart and Wiccan on it, there's going to be some interesting confrontations between those two characters. So, man, please, Marvel, give us the Champions or Young Avengers, whatever they decide to call it, because I am stoked. So much could happen with this series. All right, so what does the future hold for the Hood and Zelma? So when the Hood says, I need big help, supreme-like help, and she's like, interesting proposition. So I think this was meant to be a tease for Strange Academy. This is a series that was rumored to be in production and then rumored to be put on hold. And in fact, in a very recent article from Inverse, notice that the actress playing Zelma said, all I can say is I hope so, referring to the project actually happening. She says Strange Academy could do something really, really cool and tap a market that people are dying for. The reason that Harry Potter is what it is because it really takes you to a world beyond what you know. So I'll admit I wasn't super excited about a Strange Academy series until now. If they can have the Hood in it and Zelma and obviously Wong, it could be awesome. So I hope it happens, Marvel. I really hope it happens. I'm down for it. Okay, so the last thing to do is to put the show in the overall timeline. Of course, I have this circuit board grid that I've been adding to over time. And of course, it's going to happen after Wakanda Forever with the connection there. And I'm going to go with October 2025. It may have a little bit of it happening in September, but we're just going to stick with October because that's simpler for now. Let me know your thoughts on that. So also, let me know your thoughts about the series as a whole. I'll admit it started a little slow for me, but boy, oh boy, did it cook by the end. What an incredible series. Riri Williams was a fantastic character. Can't wait to see her again. And really, I want to see Zeke. I want to see Zelma. I want to see the Hood. Lots of cool ideas brought up in this series. So let me know your thoughts. You know I read and respond to all of them. Don't forget, we have the July contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are talking about Zelma Stanton and, the potential for a Strange Academy series. And notice I took this screenshot when we were actually doing our Doomsday Countdown watch party. So, got to mention that, right? Basically, every day that you see here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will watch a different show or movie as we lead up to the December 18th, 2026 release of Doomsday. So we have 2,200 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.